Welcome back to the kitchen at Thuya Hill. Now, as you saw, we went to our local blueberry farm and were able to pick the last of the season's blueberries, and they are delicious. I have got 8 beautiful cups here. I've got just enough to make a nice big blueberry pie, which is perfect for summer. So we're going to be making an adaptation of the recipe from Deborah Madison. Now, I found this book for a song recently. When I saw it, I had to pick it up. Deborah Madison is a chef from San Francisco who is a James Beard Award winner 3 times over. And so when I saw her book on seasonal fruit desserts, I thought I have to have this because we have so many options to get fresh fruit in the summer months. I just thought it would be a great cookbook to have on my shelf. So I'm going to be making an adaptation of her wild blueberry tart. I am going to put my ingredients into a really deep pie dish, and I'm going to have a lattice on top. It is different in structure than what she has here, but the idea is pretty much the same. I am going to be using Thomas Keller's wonderful pie crust recipe today. If you've been around Thuya Hill a while, you know that that is my go-to recipe for pie crust. It's my favorite. It's predictable, it turns out delicious every time, and it's great for quiches, tarts, and pies. And so that's what I'll be using today. Let's get started on our summer blueberry pie. So for the first step in this recipe, we're going to just turn the oven on. We're going to preheat our oven to 375, and then we're going to get started on our pie crust. So Thomas Keller's pie crust recipe requires a good amount of butter. And as you can see here, I have 1 cup of chilled butter that has been cut up and is ready to be used in our pie crust. Okay, so for our pie crust, we're going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And we're going to add our 1 cup of butter. We are also going to add a teaspoon of a good sea salt. Now you will add about 1/4 cup of ice water, and then you'll see that the pie crust will come together and get crumbly, and eventually you'll be able to form it into a ball with your hands. I've got the butter mixed in with the flour and the salt, and now I'm going to go ahead and add my 1/4 cup of ice water. Okay, I've got my beautiful pie crust here ready to be rolled out. I'm going to cut a little more on one side because I want to leave some dough for the lattice that I'm going to put on top of this pie crust. I'll leave about that much for the lattice, and this will be my pie crust. Now this is going to be a thicker, deeper pie, and so I want to have sufficient crust on the bottom to fit all of the filling for these 8 cups of blueberries. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll out this pie crust and get it set into my pie dish. Okay, so I have finished rolling out the pie crust and I have formed it into my pie dish, which I have now set into the freezer while we get on making the filling. The reason I put the pie crust in the freezer while I'm cooking the filling is because I don't want it to be melted when it goes into the oven. The crust is mainly made of butter, and so that can easily melt and kind of deform. You don't want that. You want your crust nice and cold when it goes into the oven. Okay, so we're gonna get on now making our filling. And I'm going to double this recipe. So I'll be using 8 cups of blueberries. So we're going to put these blueberries into a bowl, and then we're going to toss them with your sugar of choice. I will be using sucanat today, which is an unrefined cane sugar, and it's really delicious. It works just like regular sugar. It's just been dehydrated and unrefined, and so that is what I will be using today. I've got my fresh blueberries in the bowl, and I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of sucanat. At this time, we're also going to add our arrowroot powder, spices, and lemon juice, and we're going to let this mixture sit for 15 minutes. After that, we're going to come back to our mixture, and we're going to fill our pie crust with this beautiful sweet blueberry filling. So again, I'm doubling this recipe, so I'm going to use 8 teaspoons of arrowroot powder, and the arrowroot just works as a thickening agent. 5, 6, 8. So now we're going to add 1 teaspoon of a good cinnamon. Smells so good. And next we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. It smells delicious. And now we're going to add 4 teaspoons of some fresh lemon juice. And I'm just de-seeding mine. Here's 2 more teaspoons. And now we're going to stir everything together and let it sit for 15 minutes. When we let it sit, it's going to get really juicy. That juiciness will help to contribute to the flavor of the pie while we're baking it. So I've gone ahead and poured in my blueberry filling into my somewhat frozen pie crust. And now I'm going to get on making the lattice. When I'm finished with the lattice, I am going to cover it with a beautiful egg yolk egg wash and then stick it in a 375-degree oven for about 35 minutes. My pie crust is a little bit frozen, which is good. That's what we want. We don't want a melted pie crust. We want one that's a little bit firm. It makes it easier to work with. So we're going to roll it out. At the end, we are going to top this pie with some turbinado sugar, which honestly makes everything more festive in my opinion. So I'm going to use a pizza cutter today to make my lattice. So I'm going to start at the edges. So these lattice strips are really easy to work with when they're cold. So make sure that you place your dough in the freezer. It will just make it easier ultimately to work with. So here is our blueberry pie with the lattice crust, and we're going to go ahead and add the egg wash to it and then our sugar. So I'm using 2 egg yolks for this egg wash, and this just gives it a nice golden crust, which is so delightful when it comes out of the oven. I can't think of anything more summery than a blueberry pie. It just screams of summer to me. And it's one of our family traditions each summer to go and pick blueberries at a local farm. And we're hoping one day that our blueberry bushes will produce enough blueberries that we can just pick our own. Still, there's something very sweet about going and picking together somewhere else. We're just about done with our egg yolk wash. And then we're going to add our sugar, and into the oven it goes. Now the recipe calls for 35 minutes at 375. But I have doubled the recipe, and it's a much deeper pie dish than just a simple old tart. So it will be a little bit longer than 35 minutes, just depending on your oven. Once it comes out of the oven, you're going to let it set until it is completely cooled, at which point you can cut into it and enjoy. All right, here is the blueberry pie, fresh from the oven. It is golden brown on the crust, and it is starting to set in the middle. So I will just leave it here for a little bit to allow it to set up. It smells great, it looks great, and I can't wait to eat it.